Kyle Shanahan taking some heat over the weekend. Brock Purdy starting to make a comeback and get ready for his return. And Trey Lance, is he going to be traded? That seems to be the big talk right now around 49er land. We are going to get into that and much more on tonight's Inside the Farms with Jack Hammer and tonight's special guest, Barry a Baller. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Inside the Farms with Jack Hammer here from the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. I got a special guest with me tonight. I got Bay Area Baller. He's got his own YouTube channel as well. Wanted to do something, shake it up a little bit. I know we got basketball going on, and Baller likes to talk a lot of basketball. He talks a lot of Warriors hoop over on his channel. But we're going to pull him away from that. Do a little bit of 49ers talk with him tonight. He's also a big 49ers fan. That's how I first learned about Baller was when he was calling into the shows. Called into to Grant's show for a while, then he called into my show for a little bit. And then he got big, and then he got his own channel, and then he started doing shows on Warriors post game shows with Larry Krueger, which is awesome. I'm super excited about all that stuff for you, Baller. You're muted, by the way, just so you know. Wanted to just say, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing really good, Jack. I'm excited to be here, and I've been following your content for a long time. Especially when training camp rolls around as a fan, right? I need someone who I trust with eyes on the field and eyes on the action. And that's where I'm definitely keeping up with what Jack Hammer has to say. So I'm excited to be here and ready to talk some Niners.
Perfect. Let's get into it because we got a show that we wanted to get through. We know some folks are watching this basketball, but we want to make sure that you guys get your 49ers fix tonight. Been a lot of content throughout the day. But it was interesting over the week. I talked about this at the opening. Kyle Shanahan, he took some heat. He definitely took some serious heat. First, it was JT O'Sullivan with a film breakdown show going through the quarterback injuries. Definitely took some shots at him. Talked about nepotism, those types of things even. And then even Raheem Mostert got into the act a little bit later on Saturday. So Kyle Shanahan definitely taking some heat. I want to get your thoughts, Baller. Let's start on on overall. Kind of what's your thought on the fact that O'Sullivan and Mostert both coming in hot on Kyle Shanahan on Saturday?
Well, the JT O'Sullivan stuff, it was pretty interesting, and it was pretty eye-opening, right? Because he brought up the tape and was breaking down what happened. Like he felt like he was kind of taking some shots at Trent Williams for missing that block. That was on Trey Lance's ankle injury. He said, the left tackle didn't execute his block, and that allowed the linebacker to come in. And so he was breaking down the tape, but really it was eye-opening because he was calling out Kyle. He didn't just like you've pointed it out. You put it on Twitter, and we had a back and forth on that one about the Brock Purdy injury, how Kyle decided, Hassan Reddick, really, really good edge rusher. Let's block him with Tyler Kroft, the backup tight end. And you've pointed that out. JT pointed it out. I don't think either of you were fans of that decision. And we saw what ultimately happened. Brock Purdy's elbow exploded, unfortunately. So JT was calling him out, and it was eye-opening.
Yeah, and then you as you pointed out on Twitter, the interesting piece about that was I think it was the first play from scrimmage for the guy that replaced him, Josh Johnson coming in.
It was second down. It was his second snap, Jack. So Josh Johnson's barely played. We know he's a career journeyman. So Kyle has to get him acclimated into the game. So you would think, no, Josh Johnson's second play, he turns his back to the defense. It's a play action. Well, guess what? Hassan Reddick has a free shot at him. I'm not sure if Josh Johnson got concussed on that play. You see his head just whip back and snap back against the turf. And that was because they tried to bring Kittle across the formation to pick up Hassan Reddick, who he had made it clear all year he had no interest in playing the run. Hassan Reddick had been attacking quarterbacks all year. So trying to have Kittle go across formation to pick that up, it was a tough ask. And the result was disastrous.
Yeah, the 49ers are really lucky right on that play that they didn't have the turnover because it was close on that one. Because Reddick, I think, ended up bouncing up off the ground with the ball out of Johnson's hands, but they rolled them down and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, that was a tough one. The first, like you mentioned, the Tyler Croft play was a rough one. The very next pass play that they tried to run, the first play with Johnson, they're trying to do that boot, and like I told you, they'd been doing that all throughout the game. First off, Reddick didn't care if you run or not. He's going to go. He's going to attack the quarterback, and if he happens to run into the ball carrier, he's going to make the tackle on the way. That's the way that he did it. And then on the way the Johnson one, and the way he attacked there, we'd seen teams do that to the 49ers all season, and even the really high level film gurus who continue to carry the water for Kyle Shanahan and make excuses for him week after week. I wouldn't say week after week, because it's not week after week, but to take the excuses for him in big losses, let's put it that way, had pointed it out on their YouTube, on their Twitter and so on earlier in the year that this is something that defenses were doing to Kyle Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan offenses, that they were tired of seeing that bootleg come off the edge without anybody able to just come out clean and make it an easy throw. And so they were going to attack it. And Hassan Reddick did it. The play that you talked about in the beginning where JT O'Sullivan is getting on Trent Williams. I think, you look at the three plays that he talked about, I think that's the one that I disagree with them on. Because for first off, it's not Trent Williams' fault. What happened is Mike McGlinchey misses his block. He missed. There's a guy lined up onto the inside eye. They call it a 4 technique. So he's on the inside of McGlinchey. And so his job, he's got to get down. He's got to cut that guy off. And then the guard and the tackle come around. And McGlinchey doesn't get the block. And so because McGlinchey doesn't get the block, they get penetration. And that's where Trent Williams gets caught up in that. And so he's slowed down, and he's a big dude, and he's not able to get up field as quickly as he should. And that's where you get all the mess. And for me, the one thing, my other gripe about it with JT O'Sullivan's breakdown was where he's talking about how the guard needs to double team the tackle there instead of getting up to the linebacker. And I disagree with him there. Part of the reason that the reason he's going inside is because they're trying to draw that guy down. They're trying to create a run lane by making him step down because as the guard goes down, that guy's going to go down, right? So that's why it's that's why McGlinchey's got to get across, and it's a little bit of a tough block for him. But from a schematic standpoint, I think it's O'Sullivan kind of said, the first one's the least amount of blame on Kyle Shanahan. The second one is the kind of in the middle, and then he just kind of ramped up as it went along. And
well, can I just push back a little bit right there? Only because
sure.
You know what, Jack, I didn't like how often Kyle Shanahan was running Trey Lance. Whether it was the game in a quarter he played this season, last year. Well, last year he also had the injury, so maybe he ran him more because the arm wasn't quite right. But I mean, what was the down and distance on this Trey Lance run? Where was it? Second and
it was 2nd and 8. So
second
so
and 8.
kind of, so just for some context, really quick on that, on the 2nd and 8, they had runs on earlier in the possession. They had run on 2nd and 8. They ran the same exact play on 2nd and 8. And that's the play that Debo breaks for 51.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
And
so they're running off it. They're running a play off a play, right?
It's the same exact play. What happened on the Debo one it's interesting because on the Debo play, Lance should have kept the ball. And so they came back to it the second time around. He reads it right, and then he gets tackled and all that kind of stuff, and we know what happens. But it was because I think there was one of those things where on their sheet for that week, in this situation, this is what we're going to do. I think that's why, because and then it worked one time, and so they ran it again to make it go. That's it. I'll let you go. Sorry.
I know, I got you. No, it makes sense. It makes sense because you're always Kyle's always using a play to set up a play, or this time it was just a different option of the same play. But I just don't like how often he was running Lance. I thought, he's taking too many risks. Every time you're running your quarterback, and it's different than scrambling, right? When you break the pocket and you're scrambling, you can see everyone out in front of you. When you're asked to run up it doesn't matter who's in front of you, what 300-pound linemen or linebackers you're running. So I didn't like him putting Lance in that situation as often as he did. If it was, if it's the fourth quarter, Jack, and it's 3rd and 3, like I get it. Like there's certain situations where you have to utilize Trey's mobility. It's advantageous. I get it, but I would have used it more sparingly in like key down and distances down by the red zone. Whereas I feel like Kyle was calling it, in any spot of the field, really in any situation. As we saw 2nd and 8, most teams wouldn't consider that an ideal running down, in my opinion. But Kyle, we know he's a run first guy. He likes to run the rock. Essentially, I think he should have just utilized Trey's legs a little more sparingly.
Yeah, and I've had a lot of people talk about that, and I understand where you're coming from. I'm not a big fan of running quarterbacks to begin with. It's not my favorite thing to have them do. I think it was a big part of the reason why they went out and got Trey Lance to begin with, is because they saw this on his film at North Dakota State, and so that's what they wanted to have him do, was be that runner and in between the tackles, all that kind of stuff.
He did a lot of it at North Dakota State. He did.
Yeah, and my only pushback when you talk about the runs is, I know the volume is high, but we need to stop. We need to take a second if we can and see the different types of runs that are happening. And so I agree with you. Maybe like if we're running, how many runs is too many, right? I think that's where you have to kind of ask, right? At what point does it become too much?
Yeah,
because some of those runs are just quarterback sneaks. Some of those runs are draws, and when it's a quarterback draw, that's kind of like a scramble in a way. And I when you watch him run on the quarterback draws, those are usually the ones where he's not really taking the big hits on those. And it seemed like they ran a few of those in the game against Chicago in some spots, stuff like that. So I think when we're talking about the running, we really need to slow it down just a little bit and try to understand all the different types of runs that are going into it, and how, although it's a quarterback draw, it's a very similar run to a quarterback scramble, except for it's not outside the pocket. But Trey Lance doesn't really scramble outside the pocket. That's the other thing. When you watch him in college, he's not really a scrambler where he's running around and then he takes off down the sidelines. He's usually climbing the pocket, going up the middle, and then, that type of thing. So it's an interesting discussion, and it's something that I don't think is going to go away anytime soon, because if he's on the team this year, we're going to see him most likely be doing that still. And I think, you look at Sam Darnold's film, you see him running that stuff out in Carolina last year, and I think that's one of the things that attracts them to him as well. So we'll see how it goes there. But I understand that where there's definitely a segment of the fan base, and you're one of them, that just doesn't like the running of the quarterback. And the only other thing I'm going to say about that is there are a lot of 49er fans I found out over this last week, really the last 4 or 5 days, that are really, 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 really big fans of Jalen Hurts. They love Jalen Hurts. I don't know if you've been catching this with what's going on with Larry, but they're really big fans of Jalen Hurts, and it's odd to me that so many 49er fans are big fans of Jalen Hurts and the way that the Eagles utilize them, but they're not fans of the way the 49ers are using their quarterback, who some of those Jalen Hurts fans are saying is very similar to Trey Lance. It's an interesting discussion.
That's pretty ironic. Yeah, I see what you did there, and it's ironic.
Yeah, there you go. Well, let's leave it at that. And then the other one was, Raheem Mostert taking a shot a little bit, kind of a side shot at Kyle Shanahan, saying, there was a tweet from, I think it was from Tyreek Hill.
Yes.
I think it was from.
Yes.
About something with a Super Bowl, and he says, "Hey, imagine if we had run the ball more when we were up 2 scores with 6 minutes left in the Super Bowl." Another shot. That's definitely something that's been taken. Shanahan took some heat back in 2019. It still comes up every once in a while. Kind of, what were did you see the tweet? What was your takeaway?
I did see Raheem say that, and that it's been talked about a lot amongst Niners fans, right? Up double digits. 6 minutes left in the game. You just got to run the clock. But here's where I feel like there's some gray area, because we know oftentimes Jimmy, or whoever the quarterback, it was Jimmy at the time, they get up to the line of scrimmage. There's 2 plays called, right? Mm-hmm. And you hear Jimmy on multiple occasions, kill, right? And it's a pass play. So that makes me think maybe a run play kind of was called as option A, and Jimmy killed it into a pass, right?
Mm-hmm.
And where actually my thoughts really are, Jack, because I went back and I've watched that Super Bowl too many times. Okay. The plays were there to be made.
Yeah.
The plays were there to be made. Jimmy missed them.
Mm-hmm.
You see Kittle open on multiple occasions. Jimmy, for whatever reason, wasn't looking at him. You can see Kittle kind of forget what gesture he did, but he's like, I'm open, like I'm here. No one's around. He's looking around. And Jimmy just didn't hit him. Okay. The interception that Jimmy threw in the first half was egregious. I mean, I'm not sure if his eyes were even open on that interception. But anyway, we're getting back. We're talking about Kyle Shanahan and, his play calling in the Super Bowl that Raheem called out. Really, I think my fundamental opinion is that the plays were there to be made, but Jimmy didn't make them.
Well, yeah, he definitely didn't make them, and I think there's times where, and I get it, they have their plays and the way that they run them based on the front that they get. They might can it or what have you, but I do think there's times where you have to go into that and you tell the quarterback, here, this is the play call. If you're canning it, you're canning it to another run. You're not canning this to a pass, because you can still run against an 8-man front. The 49ers have shown the ability to do that at times, to be able to go against 8-man fronts and still run the ball down your throat and those types of things. It's not as easy, of course, but and that's my thing there. Also like Tyrann Mathieu, the safety of the Chiefs, he said it. I'm glad we were able to. They stopped trying to run the ball. In some ways, they forced them out of it. And the other thing there too is, hey, if it's as easy as just making sure you have 8 men in the box to keep Kyle Shanahan from running his offense and running the ball at you, why aren't more teams putting 8 men in the box and really forcing you to be able to do that? Because you can still play good pass coverage on the back end of that.
Yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down, and I feel like teams do. You see a lot of 5-man fronts or even 6-man fronts. That's the way I noticed, like the Rams, some of these teams would try to take away the outside zone. But now it felt like last year there was a lot less outside zone that I saw. Is that due to, Jack, you think that's due to just the skill players they had at the running back position? Like they didn't have that speedster like a Raheem or like a Breida to really threaten the outside. Did you think they ran less like stretch last year?
Yeah, I felt like they were running less like stretch, like wide zone. I think they were still running their zone, but they just weren't running it like the wide one, because there's different types, right? You have the wide zone, which takes you out to the edge, and then you have your regular outside zone, which is basically where the track is about the tight end, and then the inside leg of the tight end or outside, I'm not sure exactly which, and then they can cut off of that, or they run the inside zone, which is a little more of a roll type of thing. So, I don't think they ran that stretch quite as much. I don't think they had the speed to run that stretch. And when they wanted to run that stretch zone, that's when they were giving it to, that's where Deebo Samuel and then Ray-Ray McCloud came in, because that touchdown that Ray-Ray scored against Washington was very similar to just an outside stretch zone, but with the receiver from the backfield.
Yeah.
So, I just don't think they have that. They didn't have. I don't think they have the speed right now. So we'll see what they. I still don't think they have. Well, maybe a little bit more. So with.
They got 3 third-round picks, Jack, and they're going to pick. We know they like drafting running backs in the 3rd round. This year, you got 3 picks. So, maybe they're going after that speed element to add to the running room.
Hey, they're going to add the running back from Pittsburgh. He's a big guy, like 217, got the speed that they like. So that's going to be who they're going to go out and get right there.
It's possible.
I don't even know his name, but I'm telling you, they're going to do it.
I know exactly who you're talking about, and I don't know his name either, but he's got burners. That guy's a speed demon.
Yeah, it's like Anaconda or Anacandiana or something like that. I'm butchering his name. That's awful. But so that's Kyle Shanahan definitely taking a little bit of abuse there. And here's the thing. I'm going to just wrap it up with this. I'm not saying that Kyle Shanahan should be fired. I'm not saying that Kyle Shanahan's not a good coach. I think in the last 4 days, I went from somebody telling me that I've sold my soul because of the fact that I'm too nice with the 49ers to somebody yesterday telling me that I take every chance that I can to crap all over Kyle Shanahan. So I'm somewhere, I'm either working for the team or I hate the team. So I'm somewhere in the middle.
That's funny.
All right. So, and then, Kyle Shanahan, we just got done talking about the injury that happened to Brock Purdy out in championship game. And hopefully if you haven't, you should get yourselves over to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. There's a couple of articles that I posted over there, one on Friday and one on Saturday. Brock Purdy went on the radio out in Arizona with the Rock and Manouche show. I think that interview actually took place on a late Thursday afternoon, not Friday. But either way, it was at the end of the week. And it was a really interesting conversation. They asked some, like you mentioned before the show, they asked some really good questions to Brock Purdy. And it was also interesting because I think one of the hosts, Manouche, I think actually he was a professional quarterback, came out around the time of Joe Montana. And I think that actually he and Brock Purdy worked together. I think he actually works out Brock Purdy, or had at some point during his career. And I think they still do work out in Arizona, because there was some talk about getting out in the lab and doing some cone drills in 115-degree weather like they have out there in the desert of Arizona. But I don't know if you heard or how much you heard about it, but it was interesting. He talked about kind of the process that he went through in terms of going through the whole surgery process. And then he was asked about that big arm brace that we see him, wearing. And Purdy was just saying, that's what it is. It's just an arm brace. They put it on and it starts out at 90 and they kind of gradually stretch it out like this. It's all just for protection. He can take it off every once in a while, but in terms of like when he's doing anything, he's got that thing in a brace to keep it solid. What he did say was that he did talk about the protocol is you start throwing at 3 months, and then it all depends from there on how things go. He's doing therapy and range of motion exercises now already. And depending on how that goes, that's going to determine when he starts throwing. And like I said, he mentioned the protocol. So we're now 3 weeks post-surgery. So we have about 9 weeks left, and he might be able to start throwing. He's got some boxes to check off. And then based on that timeline, kind of what are your thoughts on Brock Purdy possibly being back at 3 months?
Well, there's some work to be done. We got to see how the elbow heals up. Now, I'm thinking he's going to be kind of ramping up right around like the middle of training camp, maybe towards the latter end of training camp. I think is really when, he might be feeling better. And at that point, if he gets in a solid week or two of training camp practices, maybe he already missed the preseason games. And at that point, would they be ready to roll him out there, or are you going to protect him for a couple weeks longer, and maybe you see what Trey's got? But everything that you said, per this interview, is kind of lining up, kind of status quo with, I feel like, what was kind of reported is that 3 months post surgery he can start throwing, and I feel like nothing's changed in that department. So I feel like it's kind of a wait and see approach, Jack.
Yeah, it's definitely a wait and see approach, and that's one of the things that this isn't. We're talking about Brock Purdy here. One of the things coming out of the owners meeting Monday and Tuesday that is wild to me is that you had Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, and neither one of them gave you anything definitive other than it could be he could return. Everybody's kind of hanging on this 6 months to 8 months. But there was both of them, John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, stated that it's possible, based on the report that they get at the 3 month mark, which is 12 weeks, at the 12-week mark, that there's a possibility that he could be back in training camp. And so we don't, and that could be earlier than 6 months, because the 6 month mark is the 25th of August, which is 2 weeks prior to the start of the regular season. So I just keep seeing so many people talking about this in a 6 to 8 months, because that's kind of the longest, and that is the worst case scenario for Brock Purdy and the 49ers, I think. but there's a possibility here that, and the team didn't roll this out, that it could be a little sooner. So we're not going to know. And I think that the best course of action is just to kind of slow everything down just a little bit. Let's see what happens at that 12 week mark. That's going to be right around the last week of OTAs. So that's kind of the date to really pay attention to here with Brock Purdy.
Hey, I'll be looking for it because I'm excited about Brock and what he showed last year. He's an exciting player. I mean, I haven't seen a quarterback with that kind of scramble ability. Like, really, I mean, obviously we saw Kaepernick in a Niner uniform. Alex Smith was kind of mobile, but it's like the quick twitch, Jack. Brock Purdy had this quick twitch to make a guy miss, get out of a hole, and now he's improvising on the run. Like, the quick twitch was rare. And hey, I want to see Brock get back out there. I hope the elbow heals up well because he's an exciting player.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is he needs to be healthy, and I agree. It's interesting. I've heard so many different discussions over the last few days, and when it comes to this offense, with Brock Purdy running it, I know you have a lot of weapons in George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey added to that mix with Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. And you got to remember, actually, Deebo wasn't out there for a couple of weeks of that. But you had an offense that averaged over 30 points a game. I mean, they were putting up points like we have never seen the 49ers do under Kyle Shanahan, in that run. And it's pretty exciting. And that's the whole thing there is it's really exciting. And I hear people I keep hearing people talking about how the difference between Brock Purdy and Trey Lance is that Brock Purdy's already hit his ceiling. He's not going to get better. Trey Lance is like this unmolded clay that just needs to be molded, and he's going to all of a sudden shoot through the roof. And it's interesting to me because that's another part of this conversation that Brock Purdy had with Rock Manouche out in Arizona was they asked him, "Have you already started to get yourself ready for training camp?" And he's like, yeah, he's already been watching film, took a couple weeks off after the season to kind of chill out, deal with the injury and all that kind of stuff. But he's been watching film for the last month, going back to the basics of the playbook, going through his reads, going through footwork, motions, formations, all that kind of stuff. So that when he comes back into camp, like he said, just kind of getting everything ingrained so that when he comes back, he's ready to go. That's number one. Because he kind of shows you that he's already working on that stuff. But then the other part was they asked him, what are some of the pros that you can carry forward into 2023, and what are some of the cons that you take away from last year that you want to change up? And I think I'm going to just talk about just the cons, because everybody kind of thinks that he's already maxed out. Well, he says, starting with the cons, just footwork, being on time. Every concept has its own timing, and there are times last year where I could tell I was still getting used to things. Even when I was playing, the timing of a slant around compared to Deebo Samuel, there's two different types of routes. So getting used to that kind of thing, that's something I have to hammer away at the off season. And again, those are like minor things. And so when we have fans that are watching, for the most part, you're seeing the ball fly or whatever. That's what you're thinking in terms of the growth is usually physical, like in terms of arm strength, speed. But as he points out here, it's timing, it's rhythm, and that's just so much of the quarterback position. And I found a tweet from back before the draft, and I was talking about that, where it's basically, for a quarterback, the number one thing that you want to have in your quarterback is you want to have things like consistency, and ability to work from the pocket, being able to have good field vision. Pocket presence, field vision, anticipation, consistency. Those are the four. And then, that consistency also comes in your motion, where you're throwing, and your throwing motion is repeatable, because that's just such a big piece of it.
Yes. As a baseball player, as a former pitcher, pitching coaches told you the same thing. Your delivery's got to be repeatable. And whoever thinks that a rookie Brock Purdy has maxed out, I mean, that's ludicrous. Brock Purdy is still developing as well, and he's going to get better with more experience. Absolutely. There's no question about it. And the one spot I think he could improve is his anticipation. He does make some nice anticipatory throws, but like even, on on the ball on the play he got injured on. I thought maybe there was a chance he could have anticipated Ayuk kind of getting open. I believe it was back towards the corner, back towards the sideline. If he would have anticipated that a tick early, maybe Reddick doesn't get his elbow. That's just one example. I think the anticipation department is going to get better as you get more familiar, you get more acclimated with these weapons like he was talking about. And Brock can definitely get a lot better. Yeah. To say a rookie has hit his ceiling, I mean, that's dumb.
Yeah, so it's an interesting discussion, and it's going to keep going on, I think, here for a while until this whole situation gets played out at the quarterback spot. And it's interesting because you have Brock Purdy, and you have Trey Lance, and you now have Sam Darnold, and I look at these guys, and I Sam Darnold, I don't know what he's going to be. He hasn't played decent last year with Carolina. Hasn't had these kind of weapons around him. I don't think he's played with an offensive coach that schemes up as well as Kyle Shanahan. So I think it's
definitely not Adam Gase.
Hey, certainly not Adam Gase. Holy moly, that guy! There's a reason why Adam Gase is no longer in the NFL right now. And one last thing, real quick, on Brock Purdy. They did ask him. The last question they asked him actually was, your coach. This is what they said. Your coach has come out and basically said it's your job to lose. Do you feel any extra pressure because of that? And I like Purdy's answer. He just says, no, sir, for me, I have to get healthy first. That's how I'm looking at it day by day. I have to get healthy. Everything will fall into place from there. And that's what I really like there. Talks about his teammates, talks about loving to compete, doing whatever it can to take to win. And then just keeping it really simple, doing nothing more than that. And I think that's really what you need to do if you're Brock Purdy and coming in and getting ready for year two.
Definitely.
That's the guy.
Yeah, I mean, that's the kind of the politically correct answer there. So Brock, every time he's at the podium, like, he's going to say the right thing. Like, this guy's wise above his years. Like, last year, he's doing all these interviews after he took over the starting job. And it's like, I had to pinch myself. Like, this kid's a rookie, and he talks like he's just like a 5 or 10 year vet already.
Oh yeah. And that was the other part too, because when they were talking to him and they'd asked him, I only talked about the negatives. When he was talking about the pros, that's when he kind of had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder with his answer. He talked about how, being able to go out and lead with leadership and courage, stepping out and leading the team, having a lot of confidence, because you have to have a lot of confidence in the NFL. And he said you can even see that on the film and just keep building off of that confidence and that leadership. So it's going to be a lot of fun. See how this thing plays out. He's got to get healthy first, and that's the biggest thing. We don't know that. But kind of stepping off Brock Purdy just a little bit here. There's been a lot of discussion too. Quarterback's just a big topic with the 49ers, but there's been a lot of people discussing this, and I've heard people saying that Trey Lance is going to get traded around the draft, and I've come out and I've said that I don't think that's going to happen. I wanted to get your take on Trey Lance. You'd kind of mentioned to me that he's probably going to stick around longer, or that type of thing, and so I want to hear from you. Is Trey Lance going to be traded?
Not this offseason. No. Jack, his trade value is arguably it's at an all-time low. Okay. He's coming off the injury. He's coming off the small sample size. He's already been replaced. Okay. Trey's stock is at an all-time low. For them to trade him right now, in my opinion, I'm thinking maybe you can get a late 2 or more real, maybe a 3rd round pick. That's where I think his trade value is at this current moment. And it would be an egregious error because you're still trading an unknown commodity. What if you trade him away and you do get, at end of the 2nd round pick, trade him away, and all of a sudden Trey turns into this star that you thought he could be when you traded all those picks to go get him. Okay, so it's risky business trading him this offseason. That's why I say it ain't happening at this draft date. So what I will say is, Jack, if Trey has a good preseason, and you could scoff at, it's preseason. Let me tell you, you show out in preseason, you make some plays, you put some good tape out there, that will help your trade value. Okay, so from the 49ers perspective, by holding on to him this offseason, you have an insurance policy, okay? You have Trey Lance still here because we obviously know 4 quarterbacks went down last year. All right. So keeping Trey in the building. He's an insurance policy, but also you give him a shot to boost his own trade value in the preseason. And I want to see him. I don't want them to rush Brock Purdy back. I want to see Lance. I think you got the perfect circumstance where you could tell the locker room, look, we're not rushing Brock Purdy back. We're going to get a week or two of Trey Lance, unless Brock completely blows the doors off of, his progression, his throwing progression, and he is locked and loaded, ready to go back 100%. Then, okay, at that point, you probably got to play Brock. Obviously, they've made it clear he's the number one guy. But under these circumstances, Brock coming off the surgery, I think you have the perfect excuse or just the perfect reason to give Lance, 1, 2, 3 games, see how it goes. Let's see this kid get some experience, because if he lights the world on fire, maybe they don't want to go back to Brock. Or if he plays pretty good and they say, oh, you know what, Brock's still our guy, but Lance played good. Well, guess what? The trade stock is now going through the roof, and you could trade him mid-season when Brock's back. You could trade him, after the season's over. And now instead of getting this third-round pick where I think his trade value is at right now, you're talking about maybe a late one.
Yeah, well, I'm not that far off of where you are. I think the 49ers, I think they're crazy to do anything with them right now during the draft. I don't think it makes sense unless they are really certain that Brock Purdy is going to be healthy to trade Trey Lance at this point. They've said that it's Trey's deal. I think it's crazy for them to not have a quarterback not have multiple quarterbacks on their roster that's healthy. Let's start off there. Getting rid of Trey Lance when you're not sure where Brock Purdy is on his timeline and be able to return, that's crazy to me. And when the draft hits, it's a month, and from now, it's this month actually. So we don't even know we're not going to know anything about Brock Purdy at that point. And so it makes no sense. I think if you're going to get off of Trey Lance and you're going to trade him, if he's going to get traded this year, it comes near the end of training camp or before the trade deadline. It's not going to happen during the draft. It happens later on, and the reason that you trade Trey Lance is because Brock Purdy is healthy. You have a rookie that you've drafted that you feel comfortable being your 3, and then you feel comfortable enough to trade Lance because you have Sam Darnold and you feel like you can win a couple of games with him until Brock Purdy comes back, or you can win a bunch of games with him. Either way, you feel like he can be a solid backup. That's the only way that I see you trading Trey Lance. I don't see him. I think it's crazy for the discussion of trading Lance during training camp. If it happens, it's going to be after the quarterback position clears up. And there's a financial component to this too. You trade Trey Lance now, trade Trey Lance before the draft. You're going to be paying $11.2 million for Trey Lance not to be on your team. Plus whatever player you right. And if you trade him, let's say you wait even until the trade deadline. If you trade him later on, then you actually save about $3.5 million. You're going to have to pay a little bit next year because of the dead cap hit, because it's in post June 1. At that point, it's post June 1. So there's going to be a little bit of money, like $5.5 million the year after that. But at least you're saving some money against the cap, and you're going to have a little bit the next year. And you know that you're set at quarterback in terms of having enough guys that you feel comfortable getting these three.
Policy is intact.
Yeah.
And I got one more thing I wanted to add about the quarterback room, Jack, and it's about Sam Darnold. Okay. We heard Shanahan talk at the owners' meetings. They're going to be splitting reps, right? That's what he said. Okay. And here's why I think he said something like that, Jack. And see, you can probably poke holes in my theory, but here's what I've conjured up on my own. I think they kind of blew some smoke Sam Darnold's way, just in a sense that they wanted Sam Darnold. They wanted him to be their QB3. But if they said, hey, Sam, you know what? You're going to be our QB3. We want you to come in. Yeah, be the third guy. Sam might be like, you know what? That doesn't really intrigue me. I might go elsewhere. I could be a 2, But they said, I think they they said, Sam, Brock's having this. He has this injury. He just had this surgery. And they kind of played up that aspect. Well, it's all true, but I think they're saying there's a lot of questions about the surgery. Trey Lance, we don't know. He had surgery too. So I think they were playing up kind of these injuries and kind of telling Sam, like, look, we'll let you compete, because they wanted him in the building. They wanted that extra insurance.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that they got him, Kyle couldn't go out at the owners meeting and say, no, it's going to be Lance. If it's not Brock Purdy, it's going to be Lance, because he had already told Darnold that, hey, we'll let you compete with these guys. So that's what I think happened. I think they just kind of blew some smoke Darnold's way and kind of played it up. And Darnold, because they wanted him. But, really, in my mind, the Niners are still looking at it as Brock Purdy is number one and Lance is number two. And we got two young QBs that we drafted. And I think they still like them both.
That's what they've been saying, right? They've been telling us that.
I think they do.
They've been saying that.
I like them both. I like Brock Purdy and Trey Lance, small sample size. But from what I've seen, Jack, he makes some really great plays, makes some great throws. His pocket presence, like his ability to kind of like when the defensive end rushes past him, Trey has that natural ability just to escape. Like he knows, okay, defensive end just ran past me, I can escape right. Whereas Brock loves to spin left, and I think he's gonna. That's one of those things where he's a rookie. He's gonna get better. His pocket presence is also gonna get better. But Trey does some things really well, and I asked you what you thought of Trey's accuracy, because that's the only question mark that I really have. That's the biggest question, is I don't know how consistent Trey is with his accuracy. If Kyle's scheming up all these 15-yard dig routes and Ayuk's open over the middle and Trey's sailing passes in practice, then I could see why Kyle would be discouraged. If he's missing swing passes to the running back and he's skipping it, then, well, I could see why, the Niners could have cooled on it. And so just while I got you here, Jack, what do you think about Lance's accuracy? Because that's my biggest question mark with him.
I think that's the 49ers' biggest question mark with him too. I think if there was if you look at if there was a frustration from Kyle Shanahan when it comes to Trey Lance, it's his accuracy, because there are some what should be easy throws underneath that are missed at times. That's one of the things that happened during training camp last year. And I think the other piece to it is, I think from a play caller standpoint, you want to know that when you call the play, you know what you're going to get from your quarterback. When you call this pass play, this is kind of what you're expecting they're going to see. And I don't think he gets that with Trey Lance. I don't think they're on the same page totally. And fortunately for the Flyers, they have that ability to kind of still make it work. Their defense is really good, and they kind of run the ball a little bit and kind of get things settled down and then go back out. We saw that in 2021 against Houston, right? They come out. He has a couple of plays early on where there's guys open. Instead of throwing the ball, he takes off scrambling. And I think Kyle Shanahan at that point is frustrated. So he just starts running the ball. And then they come back and they don't have a lot of time. And then boom, he hits one. And as soon as he hits one, he's gets onto a roll. They go into halftime and he comes right back out, and he kind of keeps everything just kind of rolled after that, because they both got onto the same page. I think that's the biggest thing with those two. And I think that's where it was different with Brock Purdy, because when Brock stepped onto the field against Miami, it was a little rough for like the first series, but then it just rolled and it just kept rolling, and it just kept growing.
And then he made you say, wow, when he hit Kittle on that hot read with all this pressure in his face, and you're like, whoa, this kid's got something.
Yeah, and I think if we wanted to, and I've heard some people talk about this, and I think this is the biggest difference between these two guys is we know that they've played a lot of different football, right? One guy played 4 years of college, the other guy played one. But Brock Purdy, he doesn't get phased by the yelling. He doesn't get phased by getting pushed by Kyle Shanahan. Whereas I think when Kyle Shanahan yells at him, he's like, okay, and then he goes out and he just runs the play again. Whereas Trey Lance is like, yeah, and whereas Trey Lance is like, well, shit, now I got to throw the ball here, and it's a little bit more robotic because he hasn't played enough to like just have that. Not that he's not confident in himself, but it's just that I'm not really doing a really good job here, I think, of explaining it. It's just there's just a different aura about how they go about their business. One guy's really comfortable in his skin. I think the other guy is still trying to find his way.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, Jack, and I feel similarly. that Brock, he's got thick skin. You can't phase Brock.
Yeah, I mean that seems to be the way that he is. I mean that's why when I don't he's some of those early on some of those throws and he still does it. He's doing this with his arm, or he's beating on his chest, or he's slapping helmets with Trent Williams or what have you. I think I think guys buy into that kind of stuff, and Brock Purdy is kind of like when you watch all those like movies, like those college football movies, and you got how they always portray the quarterback as like the prima donna, who's showing off, right? He's that guy, but at the same time, when we get in the huddle, let's go, man, let's go, let's do it, and let's get this done. And he's not the jerk in that way.
No, but he makes his presence felt, and the guys respect him. The guys like him, and hey, I think we got two talented young quarterbacks, and I'm excited to see what they got.
I am too. I'm excited for we're going to see a lot of Trey Lance, and that's the whole thing. We're going to see Lance. We're going to see Lance throughout OTAs. We're going to see him all through minicamp. He's going to be the guy, and Sam Darnold's going to be there too. And there might be a rookie if they draft one, or they might even pick up a guy as an undrafted free agent. I think there's going to be a third guy that's going to be on the field with them during that time. I can't wait for this thing to start. They're going to
need somebody for more reps. Yeah, they're going to need another camp arm because Brock's not going to be throwing. It's not just going to be Darnold and Trey making all these throws. It'd be too much. Yeah, they're going to bring in somebody, whether they draft him or it's an undrafted guy.
Yeah, I just can't wait till they get to that point. I can't wait to see the ball rolled out there and see these guys start to compete. We don't get to see all of it during OTAs. We get to see one day a week of that, and then we get to see all 3 days of minicamp, or two, however many days they have. We get to be there for all that. So I can't wait till that, and then I can't wait till training camp. This is where I get excited, is when we get to see them on the field. That's what excites me. I'm not really a big fan of the offseason. I get tired of talking about hypotheticals. And so I just can't wait to see these guys get on the field and watch them start to compete, because it's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
That's what it's all about, Jack. I say it all the time on my channel. It's when I'm putting up, like I just cut up some Javon Hargrave highlights, all 22 coaches film. And because it all goes back to the film. Like what we talk about has transpired on the gridiron, right? That's what it all comes back to. So yeah, when they get out there, and I'll be looking forward to your OTA reports and your training camp reports, because as a fan, you're my eyes out there, Jack, and I respect what you got to say. And hey, football season will be here before you know it.
It will. And we got a big basketball game tomorrow night. OKC coming to town. That's going to be fun. We got Andrew Wiggins going to be back in time for the playoffs. I expect some big things from the Warriors. I think the Warriors are going to they have a chance to go deep into this run in the playoffs, and we're not going to get into it right now, but I can't wait to see how it goes with this. It'd be fun. Maybe sometime we can talk some Warriors at some point on your channel or something, because getting into the playoffs right now, and all the different, there's some crazy scenarios over there as well in terms of trades and things that have happened that people are talking about. I think
Jack just invited himself on my channel, so absolutely we're going to have to make that happen. I'm going to get Jack. We're going to be talking Golden State Warriors. Maybe we'll mix in some Giants. Yeah, Jack's coming on. Bay Area Baller 18. You see it right here. Check me out. And Jack, I can't wait for that to happen, because love talking ball.
I can do it anytime. Baseball, basketball, you let me know. We'll get it done. Baller, thank you so much, Eric. I appreciate you coming on, man.
Hey, thank you, Jack. You have a great rest of your night.
Yeah, for sure. And everybody else, I want to say thanks to everybody that's tuned in. If you guys can do me a favor on your way out, hit that like button. That's a big thing. I should be saying that throughout the show. Hit that like button, and also hit subscribe. And when you subscribe, also hit the little bell notification so you don't miss anything as it comes up. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Have a great rest of your evening. Talk to you soon. Take care.